Hello everybody, and welcome to Thoughts and Theorycrafting. I'm Dick Tango, and today I'm going to be doing part 2 of my tier list series. We're going to be covering the in-between and worst guns for mid and long-range use among the ARs and LMGs. I would go ahead and recommend you go watch that first video, which will be linked down in the description. That will establish kind of the baseline and tell you all the best guns and why I think so. Something that I have changed, I threw the Kilo up in this kind of S plus tier. It's really not its own tier, but I do think it's worth noting that I think it is overall a better gun than the PKM even. The PKM is still excellent, but I would say that the Kilo just edges it out a little bit. It is really, really good. It doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. It's very easy to use, it's very reliable, and it's like time to kill and mobility numbers are not bad at all. They're very solid. So the all-around experience using that gun is just absolutely unmatched in the game, in my opinion. There's still a lot of other good and viable guns, but that one would be the best. The last gun that I covered in the best guns video was the M4, and I kind of floated it between B and A tier and landed it in the A tier here. And I almost want to make this own little between A and B category for the M4 and another gun, because they're both very, very good in the mid-range, but weaker in the longest ranges compared to, say, the Kilo, the Bruin, the Grau, the M13. Those guns that are just much, much more accurate and easier to hit shots at the very longest ranges with. The M4, I think, is a little bit easier to use at those ranges than the other gun I'm going to compare here, the Ram 7, and that's why I'll put the Ram 7 here tentatively in the B tier. If you're excellent with the Ram 7's recoil and are hitting your shots at long range reliably, I'm not sure anyone can hit the Ram 7 at longest ranges as well as you could say hit the Kilo's shots. So even though this has a better time to kill, it's going to be harder to run at those very long ranges. It also has this 50 magazine limitation versus the 60 of, say, the Kilo and the M4, which is going to cause you a few extra problems. Though it is very, very good in mobility. It has a great bullet velocity, higher than the Kilo, as you can see down here. It has, I would say, pretty good recoil control as far as like mid-range is concerned, and that high fire rate just makes it very, very reliable and easy to use within its best effective ranges. And as you can see here in these time to kill charts, it beats, if you're hitting your shots, it beats the Kilo at basically all ranges. I really think once you get to this 55-60 meter range, you're going to start hitting more shots with the Kilo, and you're going to even up that time to kill. And then even the longer ranges, I think you're going to have a better time to kill than the Kilo. Though the Ram also has the benefit of being able to hit leg shots and stomach shots and get the same exact damage as you would from hitting chest shot, just like the Kilo, just like the M4 and a few others. I really like this gun, and it's been being used by Symphony and Tfue and a few others that are just excellent players, but I would warn you that you're probably not going to be hitting the same number of shots they are, because they really are just excellent at handling the recoil on this gun. It is a very, very good gun, especially in the mid-range. I think it's maybe the best gun to pair with a sniper rifle, but as far as long and mid-range ARs, I do think that this Ram is just a little bit below the other A tier guns here, so it's going into the B tier. I think it's very good, and if you are just excellent with its specific recoil and the feel of it is perfect to you, then I think it kind of does fit in with the A tier in that case, with some small limitations, primarily being the 50 round mag, but it is still a very, very good gun. So in the right hands, it can be B tier. And, you know, for me personally, the M4 is a B tier and the Ram is an A tier, but I think most people prefer the recoil on the M4 because it goes up and to the right, whereas the Ram goes up and to the left. Moving on to the next gun here, we have the AN94. This gun really is just a bit of an overall disappointment. Despite how great this thing can feel to run, especially how good it is in multiplayer, it really is just kind of an overall mediocre weapon. You've got a worse ADS, a little bit better in the movement, but not massively better. A little worse in the bullet velocity, though not really importantly so. Pretty good reload time, but what really suffers for this gun is its time to kill. The time to kill, as you can see here, is just not gonna quite cut it. It is a little lower. This is all chest shots as well. It's a little lower than the Kilo, basically everywhere, and a lot lower in some places like this in between 63 and 87 meter range. The hyperburst is a useful feature, so despite it not being the most accurate, I think its recoil is a little harder to control than the Kilo. Despite it not being the quickest for mobility and handling, and despite its pretty weak time to kill, I do still think this is a B tier weapon, and that's because the hyperburst does have some very nice uses. If you are team shotting somebody, if you call out a person and start shooting them at the same time with a teammate, that hyperburst is going to drop the time to kill down a lot versus if you're doing it all on your own. So it's effective DPS in those scenarios, and its ability to break armor with the hyperburst, which is, unlike the description says, it's 3 shots, not 2. If you do those 3 shots plus 1 extra hit to the chest, you are going to break armor and push someone behind cover. So there are specific uses for it, but the fact is that overall time to kill is very important, and it doesn't make up for the low time to kill with its handling and mobility or its accuracy with recoil. So I do think this gun does not sit in the A tier, but in the right hands, I think it can be very solid. So I think B tier is a good rating for this gun. Moving on to our next one here, we have the Fin. So this is the most recent LMG edition. It has that very neat adverse barrel set and the chainsaw attachment. It's a very fun gun to use. I do not think that it's absolutely excellent, but I do still think it fits in the B tier because it is absolutely insane how accurate this gun is. So there are basically 2 ways to build this gun. As you can see down here, I've got it with of course, the longest barrel and monolithic. I'm running tac laser in the 100 round belt. Some people, because of its fairly decent 5.83 second reload time, it's better than the PKM, even when the PKM's got sleight of hand on it. Some people think you maybe can run the 75 mag. I don't think the damage it does is worth it. Though, as you can see, it's got a decent ADS and better than the PKM in its ADS movement, which is a pretty important stat, and it's got better bullet velocity than the PKM. Because of the bullet velocity and bullet drop, by the way, you cannot run the adverse on this gun for long range. It's close and like mid-ish range are decent, but the long range just does not cut it. It drops absolutely ridiculously, and the recoil is very hard to control. But when you're not using the adverse barrels, the recoil is very accurate. And if you notice, I did not have a commando foregrip on this. If you wanted to make it absolutely the most accurate, you could run either the tac laser, the 100 round mag, or sleight of hand, any of the 3, and run a commando instead of one of the others of those. That would make it just a near perfect laser, like old Grau or like old Bruin. Good, accurate. It is just absolutely insanely accurate. Where it does suffer, though, here is this fire rate. It is notably lower than the PKM and Kilo, which is going to be a little more punishing if you go to miss a shot. And then these time to kills just don't quite cut it. It doesn't have a headshot multiplier either. Those 3 things together, the time to kill, the limitation on the ammunition / reload, and the the RPM, the fire rate of the gun, is really just going to prevent it from coming across as a better gun than a lot of the others here. So it's weak here in this mid-range, though it has a decent long-range time to kill, and it is very accurate. You miss 1 shot, though, and at a lower fire rate as well, it's going to hurt your time to kill a lot. So I don't think, unless you feel like this gun works with your aiming ability very well, that it's the best. But like I said, it is still B tier, and these guns in certain scenarios are going to be very, very good. So anything here in this B tier, I think, can be a best for you gun, depending on your playstyle. Moving on to the next one here. This one may surprise some of you, but I've got the M91. Now, it does have a bit of a mobility weakness with a slower ADS movement speed, and ADS time than the PKM, and it also has a notably lower bullet velocity than the PKM. It's still within the usable range, I'd say, close to that 1,000 mark, but it's going to be noticeable at those longer ranges. The way it makes up for it, though, is by having very, very good attachments. The 150 round mag is an a very, very small ADS penalty, and the move penalty is there, but it's not that important. And so you don't run sleight of hand. You don't have to. You can run the 120 or 150 mag, and you still keep a very, very respectable for a belt-fed LMG reload time. It's barely slower than the PKM is when the PKM has sleight of hand on it, and it's about 1.8 seconds better than the PKM without sleight of hand. So once you've gotten aim down sights and you are able to adjust for that bullet velocity, what you end up with is a very respectable time to kill, not PKM good, but more accurate. Like, I definitely have an easier time hitting shots with this up until I have to really lead the target than I do with the PKM. The PKM is just a little bouncier side to side, and for whatever reason, the PKM, the commando foregrip, just does not cut it for side to side bounce. The snatch grip does even better, or about the same, I guess. So I really think that the M91, if you like the feel of it, is just a very solid gun. You've got the standard 67 millisecond open bolt delay, just like the PKM. And like I said, very respectable time to kill, though its ADS is notably slower. But you do get the 150 round mag versus the 100 you might have on a PKM, or you get a much better reload time. So you've got some flexibility with the way you build it compared to the PKM as well. So that one is going to be going here in the B tier. And then one more here to be in the B tier is the Oden. This gun is very fun, first off. It does crazy, absolutely insane damage, but it does have the low fire rate and a pretty nasty kick, so it can be hard to use. It also has this 30 round magazine limitation at the top, and it starts with 20, so it's really punishing with attachments. I've got a few builds to compare here. First thing I'm going to do is just show you the first build is a Colossus suppressor, which is maybe the best attachment in the game. It's going to, for a pretty modest ADS penalty, give you suppression, recoil control, bullet velocity, and damage range, which is absurd. But we're going with a commando. You can run ranger. It's going to hurt your ADS more, but depending on how you feel about the recoil, personally, I like the commando better, but a lot of people swear by the ranger with this gun. I'm running tac laser and then the 30 round mags here, and this leaves you room for the optic. But this first build does not use one of the barrels. What that does is gives you a lower bullet velocity here at 990 meters a second, but its handling is very respectable here with good movement, good ADS movement, and great ADS time here. Then if you look down here, the time to kill is just outrageous. It's better than the PKM up until this 62 meter mark or so, and very, very close to it after. Though note, with the much lower fire rate, it is a 413 RPM gun. It's much more punishing to miss shots. So the recoil, the fire rate, and the limitation on the magazine size does hold it back for sure. But if you're handling the recoil on it very well, it's a solid gun. I've got two other builds here in which I've thrown on the 730 and 810 millimeter barrels. Those are both going to provide damage range, recoil control, and bullet velocity. If you notice, with this longest barrel, you get the best bullet velocity of any full auto gun in the game. This specifically, if you throw either a hollow sight on the gun or even use iron sights, the tac laser, the thing is respectably mobile. It's not the best, but it is crazy, like good at like pinging away at targets. You can really sit for a second, aim, and click on a guy a couple of times and break his armor. So there are some strengths to this gun other than just kind of letting it rip in that mid-range, which it does handle decently well. And if you see here, we compare the other two Odens, it gets even better with the damage ranges. You have to go all the way out to 83 meters before the PKM starts being better again, with the longest barrel. And then the ADS time on that middle barrel, as well as the recoil control, is very respectable. It's not a bad ADS, and the movement's decent. So I definitely think that the Oden's a fun to use gun, and with its time to kill, especially in the mid-range, if you're hitting your shots reliably, is very, very good. So you could even potentially run this with the Origin. But the low fire rate is going to hurt if you start missing any shots, and this gun is not easy to hit all your shots with when you are going full auto. You're just letting it rip. So in that case, I do put it still in the B tier, but it is in your hands to decide whether or not it shifts closer to the A tier or really down to the C tier. Personally, when I use this gun, I miss people in the mid range. I'm just late on my tracking. I'm bouncing all around. I don't know what it is about the feel of the gun, but I miss a good bit. So this one is just a little too weak for me. But I've seen people that can reliably hit those shots, and the time to kill when you are hitting shots is absolutely insane. Go on here to the C and D tier guns now. That's going to be all for the B tier. First, I'm going to talk about the FR556. And if you'll notice here, I'm using on TrueGameData.com the Warzone version because it does not have a damage drop off. This gun has some interesting concepts to it. Since it's a burst weapon, it does have a the ability to kind of push people into cover with those really quick 3 shots. But a 3-round burst does not, I don't believe, breaks armor. 3-round burst is going to do 120 out of the 150 damage you need if you're hitting no headshots to get the armor broken. And even if you hit 1 headshot, you're not breaking armor. So what frequently will push people back into cover is getting that armor broken notification, and that will shove people back in. With the AN-94, you can let the hyperburst plus 1 bullet go. There they are going into cover. Here you have to hit 2 headshots out of the 3 and 1 chest shot. And if you miss any bullets, you've basically done nothing. So it is very punishing. Now, if you're hitting all your shots to the chest, its time to kill is very solid, especially at the very long ranges. It does suffer in the closer ranges, but that's SMG territory if you're running it with 1. The headshots are also interesting. I just don't think it's accurate enough to hit headshots reliably. If you are hitting 3 headshots, you do break all their armor. So in that mid-range, it does have its uses, but I think the AN-94 does everything it does and better, and if you start missing any shots, the time to kill is absolutely brutalized. It gets up here near this upper damage range for the Kilo when you start to miss any shots, because you don't just add another shot at the RPM, you have to wait for the whole burst delay. And for this reason, I do think this gun's D tier. There's a few nice things about it. The way I built it here, I don't have an extended mag, so you really just don't run through the ammo that quickly. And it does give you room for more attachments, but it doesn't have enough attachments to really make up for the limitations. If you're just hitting every single burst to the chest and hitting headshots as well, then sure, I guess you can run this gun. But I've never found a way where the grouping of the burst is tight enough to not just have to manually control it. And manually controlling a burst for recoil is very, very difficult. It's going to require you to do like a quick pull down on the mouse or your control stick, which is just hard to pull off. You have to time it perfectly and do it the exact right amount. So I would say that your best bet is to go with the AN-94 if you want to rock something with some kind of burst going on. Moving on to the Holger. So this gun has one enormous weakness. It does not have an extended barrel attachment. It just doesn't. It has a pretty low base bullet velocity of 700, or sorry, not 704. It's the 720. It's actually pretty standard, but the fact that you're only running monolithic to improve it means that your end result is 828 meters a second. That just hurts. Its 3.44 second reload is better than 100 round belt fed LMG, but it's nowhere near as good as your ARs. And then it has okay handling. I mean, that ADS is very good. You do have that extra attachment slot from having no long barrel, so you can run your tack laser as well as your foregrip and your barrel and, or not barrel, your suppressor. I've got the FSS Ranger for a little bit better aiming stability, but really that extra attachment slot feels very wasted. What you can compare that to is the Kilo. As you can see, I've got this Kilo built here with the Whisper barrel. Oh, actually, for some reason, it's still got the Whisper and monolithic. Let's pull that off real quick and see what that does for it. So we have the 1, 2, 3, and 4 attachments there. That's what I wanted. All right, so if you can see here, the Kilo here has the Whisper barrel, the Commando foregrip, 100 round drum mag, and a tack laser. You can get your own optic after that. It has better bullet velocity, quicker reload, and it does suffer from the movement speed, but you're going to run probably amped in SMG or Origin and have better movement speed than either of those anyway, but it has worse ADS movement speed, the Holger does, than this Kilo by a lot, and that's going to hurt your ability to peek in and out of cover. So you're losing out in almost every way, and it gets even worse when you start to look at the time to kill here. Let's declutter it here and compare the 100 round Kilo to the Holger. And as you can see, The kilo wins in most, not all, but like in the most important range here. And then these right here, where the Holger and the kilo trade off, are just going to be ranges where your one shot difference is going to flip them back and forth. But you have better bullet velocity and, in my opinion, better recoil control in the kilo, so you're going to be hitting more shots. And then it gets much worse if you compare it to your standard 60 round kilo, which I think is the much better build here. Once you're comparing the Holger to the 60 round kilo, it's just going to be worse time to kill basically everywhere. You get this tiny little place where the Holger gets better, but it's really not. You could throw the 100 round mag on your normal kilo, and you would have a notably lower handling. Your ADS would be worse, but your time to kill is much, much better. So I really don't think that there's a place for the Holger with its low bullet velocity and its pretty terrible time to kill, and DPS reflects that as well. For that, I'm going to put it in the D tier. For a quick reminder, I don't have an F tier here because I don't think any gun for mid and long range from the ARs and LMGs is completely and utterly unusable in this game. I think on a hot day, a great day for you, you could run your big, you could drop a big bomb with the Holger or the FR556, the Famas, even those guns. So that's why I put them in D tier, and there's not an F tier going on here. Other categories of guns might have an F tier weapon though. Moving on to our next one here is the MG34. Something you'll notice here, the ADS is bad, and actually I think the ADS comes out to being worse because something weird with the site where it's not showing as much of an ADS penalty for the extended mags as it could. Lower, not unusable, but lower bullet velocity here hurts as well. A very slow reload time. It's barely better than the PKM, and since it has a 50 round mag by default, you have to choose between your sleight of hand or your extended mag. And if you go extended mag, you get 100, which is the base on the PKM. When you're going into the damage, though, it does have its strong side. Its damage is crazy. It's very hard to hit shots with because of its recoil, but if you're somehow managing it, it's an insanely good time to kill. I just don't think that the terrible mobility, the low fire rate, compared to the PKM, it does have a little bit better of a fire rate than the PKM. I was thinking it had lower. But the bullet velocity primarily and the bad recoil control make it very, very, very hard to use. On top of that, bad reload time, and you have to waste an attachment on a bigger magazine. Really don't think the 50 round mag is remotely viable outside of solos, so you can't even run just sleight of hand and help the mobility of the gun. And then it's terrible handling. That's going to put it into, I'd say, C category, just because if you're hitting your shots, you're going to kill crazy fast. This is the one big upside. Other than that, the gun has very little to offer. Moving on here to the SA87. Oh, actually, I mentioned that the ADS would be higher. I was mistaken. The SA87 is the one with the ADS that will be higher. This is representative pretty well. The SA87, though, with its very slow already ADS, is going to be worse, actually, in-game. That's the one where the extended mags don't read right. It does have a very good bullet velocity here, and its fire rate is also, it is lower. So it's going to be a little harder to hit your shots. Its recoil is pretty rough. Though you do get a decent reload time, it's nothing like the ARs, but it's okay. And your 60 round mag's okay. So you're a little limited on the ammo there. If you try to take out a vehicle or something, you're going to suffer a little bit. Its big strong suit though here is the time to kill. All the way up until, everywhere, but like all the way up, especially here until the 63 meter. It's notably better than both of the other base guns I have here. It's just a very, very, very strong gun as far as time to kill and damage goes, and I'd say it's easier to use overall than like the MG34. So for that reason, I think it's going here in the C tier. If you really like its recoil control, if you're able to manage it well and you're able to lead your shots to make up for the bullet velocity, if you just really like the feel of this gun, I'd say you can run it. It's still got a lot of weaknesses with its terrible ADS, which keep in mind if you run an optic with it, it's going to go up even higher. And like I said, this 534 is not representative because the magazines are not showing up as much of a penalty for ADS as they should. So it's just really a rough gun to run because of its mobility primarily, but it's got good damage, so that's why it sits out of the D tier. And then our last gun, the FN Scar 17 here. This gun's a little interesting. So it does have a very, very low fire rate, worse than the SA87. It's not quite Oden bad, but the problem with this gun is that the Oden exists. With this gun, your time to kill is very nice in the mid to long range, but you don't get that close range time to kill, so you can't maybe justify running it with a shotgun. Then you only have the 30 round mags, just like the Oden, and then the mobility is okay. So this ADS is pretty solid. The move speed's not terrible. The ADS move speed is worse than the Kilo, and its bullet velocity is pretty good. But in any case, the damage is just not going to cut it compared to the Oden, because the Oden does better damage than the PKM at basically every range. Where the Scar, it doesn't have that drop off. I mean, it does actually have a drop off. It's just not enough of one to make a difference in the time to kill at any range in Warzone. But if they have like an odd number of plates, like if they've plated up to 200, or if they have a partially hit plate, you are going to go into some situations where that matters. So if you see here, its DPS is barely better than the Kilo in some scenarios. So I do think this gun, because of its mobility, if you like the recoil pattern on it, is okay, because its damage is solid. It's not amazing, but that does put it in the C tier for me. So just a very quick overview, because we have done all of the guns currently in the AR and LMG categories for mid and long range use. The one exception being the FAL. As I said, I'm going to cover that in a different video. But we have the very best gun in the game, the Kilo. It's just crazy all around good. Good handling, great recoil control, solid damage, great bullet velocity, good attachments. Just everything about it is just very, very good. It's reliable. It's usable. The PKM having a couple more limitations, primarily just being the reload time. Its slower handling is, I'd say, balanced out by its damage, but you want to run it differently. I don't think this is a gun you can run with the Origin, which does put it just a step below the Kilo. Then moving on here, we've got this really, really well balanced set of A tier weapons. We've got 6 weapons here. You could argue 5 to 7, depending on how you feel about the RAM exactly, as well as the M4. But you've got guns that just have good damage, great accuracy here, just kind of a nice all-around balance. Personally, I think that the M13, if you like the gun, can kind of float closer to the PKM because of that very long range. But yeah, like I said, all of these guns are exceptionally viable, and then in the right hands and right situations, everything here in the B tier is very, very good. These C and D tier guns, I think all of them have a better version of themselves. With the MG34, you should just run the PKM. With the SA87, you should probably just be running like the AMAX or the AK, or maybe a 60-round Bruin. With the Scar, you should probably be running the AMAX or the Oden. With the FR, you should be running the AN94 or just a Kilo or something like that. And with the Holger, you should be probably running the Kilo or the PKM or the Bruin. There's just really no place for these C and D tier guns if you want the best. Now, like I said, in certain scenarios, on the good day for you, you can probably do well with these guns. There's no F tier weapons. But really, there's something better in basically every scenario than those weapons here. I'm going to be going on with more tier list videos. If you have any comments, any critique, any questions, feel free to leave a comment. If you like the video, give it a like. Give me a subscribe if you would. And be sure to check out my Twitch. You can see it right there, twitch.tv/DickTango. I'll actually be streaming just shortly after this video uploads. And be sure to check out the other videos on the channel as well. And I hope to see you around.